You are listening to the Doc Malik podcast. This show is 100% independent and fully funded by listeners like yourself. So, if you wish to support Ahmed in all that he is doing, then please subscribe to his channel on Spotify or his Substack. Or simply buy him a coffee with a one-off donation, links to which can be found at docmalik.com. Now, let's get on with the show.
During the week, if Teddy's got school, we're up at 7. Teddy's not at school at the moment. He's just come off 2 weeks autumn break. It can vary. I mean, I'm not a particularly early riser, but I don't sleep fantastically well. Ever since the kids came, long time ago, I used to be brilliant at sleeping. Sleep was my great kind of like retreat from bad day at work or something. I could just go to my bed at 10 o'clock and sleep through till 10 o'clock the next day if I wanted to. But ever since the kids came, they reprogram you in that way. I'm awake.
Yeah. So I was the same. So before kids, I used to be up till like 2 a.m, working away like an idiot. And then I'd be really sluggish in the morning. My whole circadian rhythm was messed up. But I get up now at 5:30 in the morning. And
even in the darkness?
Yeah. So I get up at 5:30. I put my red lamp therapy on my neck just because it's a bit achy. I get my little coffee. I sit in quiet and peace. I drink and meditate. And then at 6 o'clock, I start my stretching exercises and yoga type stuff. And then around about 6:15, I start doing some strength training and weights. And then by 7 o'clock, I'm done and I start making, breakfast and pack lunch and then drop off the kids at school. And then 9 o'clock, my kind of day starts. But
what a guru you are.
Yeah.
I mean, I could say I wish I did that, but I think that, wishing's for the birds, really. I think one is what one is.
Yeah.
I don't think would I ever get to the point where I was getting up at 5:30? I don't know. How do you take your coffee, by the way?
So we've got a bean to cup machine. It's brilliant. We've had it for 10 years. And
is that like a proper, like the sort of thing a barista would manipulate in a cafe? Wow.
Yeah. I mean, you can do everything. You can make like cappuccino, espressos, whatever. You can steam your milk. I have it really simple. I just have a black Americano and it's very dilute. So I used to have 3 beans. There's a strength counter. You can do 3 beans, 2 beans, 1 bean. And I used to have 4 3-bean coffees in a day. And I was wired and I couldn't go to sleep. And I was anxious and everything. And I was maybe it's a caffeine. So then I cut it back down. And now, compared to 12 beans in a day, I'm on to 1 bean a day.
Yeah,
and
I only drink coffee once. I only use a mocha pot as well. I must say, I think having one of your machines and only having an Americano, that's like having a Ferrari Testarossa and never getting it out of second gear on the way to the supermarket. I mean, what's the point? But I just have a mocha pot because all I drink is black coffee, but I only drink it once in the morning. And then I don't, it's not even self-denial. I don't think about coffee again until I'm waking up the next day. So
Same. It's just become like a ritual. It's just nice having a nice warm drink first thing in the morning. And
you do look well, Ahmed. I mean, I remember meeting you, I think with Sean Flanagan. I think we met for dinner in London.
Yeah.
A long time ago now, with more people maybe around the table than just the 3 of us. I don't remember that, but I remember meeting you, and you looked quite different then. I mean, you look well
everybody
now.
Says that. Everybody says that. And actually,
you look quite shiny. You look as if you've been buffed up with a soft cloth. You look.
Another thing as well is people actually say when they come in the studio, "Wow, you look even better in real life." I'm like, "Oh, thanks. I'll take that."
Yeah, you do. If it's getting up at 5:30 and doing a bit of yoga and strength training, an Americano from your machine, it's working for you.
It's a lot of things, I'm doing sauna regularly as well, 5 days a week, and cold plunge, and I think that really helps. It really helps detox.
Wow, you're collecting the therapies, aren't you?
Yeah, being outside in the sun and daylight.
Doc Malik's therapy bingo.
But honestly, Neil, I think as a man, right now who's 50, I think the kind of things that you want to look out for in terms of your health is like, do you have a flat stomach? Is your stomach flat? Is your belly flat? If it's not, that's a sign of insulin resistance, metabolic dysfunction.
Visceral fat, as we call it.
Yeah. Do you get bloating after a meal? That's gut dysbiosis. There's something, and what you're eating, your diet's not right. You shouldn't have that. You should wake up with a morning erection. And if you don't, your hormones are out, your circadian rhythm's out. You know, if you have a low libido, that's again a sign of, you know, pure hormones. And
correct me if I'm wrong on that one. Doesn't the visceral, the belly that we're talking about, the gut that I note, I'm very aware of the sort of teardrop shape of men of my age. You know, they're narrower at the shoulders and they're wider at the, you know, they've got that kind of teardrop of existential sadness. And I wonder, or I think I'm right in saying that visceral fat becomes, well, at a certain level, it's secreting its own hormones, isn't it? It's its own organism.
Bingo. Absolutely. And estrogens, and it's not good. It's not good for you. So, I mean, these are like simple things, like, and also like, you know, do you have bad breath? That's an indicator of something wrong. Do you have bad body odor, like sweat? That's a bad sign as well, you know? And this is the thing, like, people need to be just vigilant and aware of it. And if they are registering any of these kind of things, they need to think, like, what is wrong in my life? What can I do to improve this? But sadly, there's a lot of people who are just walking around quite unhealthy. And the doctors don't have a clue how to fix it, except give you a pill. Anyway, we're not here to talk about...
I've got weights. Just on a last note, I do have weights. In my garage, I've got a bench and I've got a frame for doing my dead hangs and my pull-ups.
Nice.
Yeah. And I've got kettlebells, 2. And yeah, I don't do a lot. I don't think I'll ever get to doing scary heavy. But, you know, I do a bit of progressive overload and all that. I do what I can. Good. I do what I can, Doc.
But what you've just described there is perfect. Like, you're exercising at home. You don't need to pay a membership fee to go to a gym full of people just taking pictures of themselves and walking around on their phone. You know, like you know that, like, the gym girl who doesn't want any guy looking at her, is wearing a hoodie over her top, but she's wearing shorts that basically cover nothing. Like, you know, it's like, but she's like, don't look at me. But at the same time, she's taking videos to put on her social media to say, look at me. You know, all these kind of weird people hang around in gyms. The guys are no different. You can exercise at home, just like what you've described, with your body weight, with a mat, with a few kettlebells, simple weights, a pull-up bar. And I don't think you need heavy weights either. You know, you don't need that. Your body weight's enough.
I'll be quite frank with you. Because of the age I am and because of the sort of high point of my cinema going, I take all of my striving to be better physical references from Rocky IV, where he has to fight, you know, Drago, the big Russian, and he goes to Siberia or something, and he's just out in the snow doing pull-ups on trees and lifting logs. You know, I think no gym for Rocky.
Are you running with a tire tied to your waist
all
as
the
well?
time on the way to the Marks and Spencer's food hall? Tire tractor on chains over my shoulders.
You need to boycott Marks and Spencer.
Got to shop somewhere.
Yeah, just local farm. You got no local farms, no local shops?
Well, we do a bit of that as well. I'm talking about, you know, getting a pint of milk and whatever.
Yeah. I'm
not a purist, Doc. I'm a flawed human being.
I'm trying to get away from supermarkets as much as possible. So we're quite lucky. We've got a local food cooperative called Organity. We've got, you know, a great local farm for beef and meat and eggs. I've got my own chickens. And yeah, we still go to the supermarket for some basic things that I can't get anywhere else. But, you know, I hate it. They're shutting down all the people, cashiers.
Oh, you speak the truth, I know, but yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we were going to talk today about what? I've forgotten now. Digital ID, or what was it? Or the insanity, the world closing in on us, the fact that it feels like everything's ramping up. It really does feel like it's just going insane.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think that is blatantly the intention. You know, that's like the, whatever, you know, apparently they play sounds at a certain pitch outside the entrances to shopping malls in cities because apparently it drives away adolescents because it's a frequency that they don't like. I don't know if that's true or not, but
I think it is. It is, by the way.
I think something like that. In fact, I mean, that would be an analogy for what I think there's a frequency, as it were, that's being broadcast to keep everybody's blood pressure up, teeth on edge, anxiety levels, cortisol. We're being kept, because if you can keep somebody anxious and afraid, then they're not really going to start, digging the escape tunnel.
Yep. But you had a positive message today. We were talking about this the other day. Like, we can't all be down and doom and gloom. We need to be positive about things.
Well, I think I'm quite well positioned to do that, because I stand before you as a natural pessimist. I'm a glasses half empty person. Some would say, that I've got that kind of West Coast Scottish northern latitudes tendency towards the dark, and the necessity to sit around a roaring fire, to drive away the wolves and the demons. I mean, I'm sort of like that. And so I if anybody listening to this that feels, dark and, we're doomed, I get that. But it is the way that someone somewhere has decided that we ought to feel. And for me, Ahmed, it took me a long time. It started for me 5 years ago, and I'm not there yet. But I've realised that my optimism comes from a willingness, a realisation that you just have to shrug off everything that you thought and trusted before. And that is a very enlivening, invigorating process to go through. You talked about, cold plunges, whatever, where I'm imagining you get into a bath full of ice cubes. And it's a terrible shock to the physical. But it also, you come out of it feeling like you've been rebirthed. But out of that shock and the pain comes something that's worth having, which is why people keep on doing it. And, I think one of the things I've learned, which is optimistic, I think, is that, nice will be the death of us. A lot of us are raised from our mother's knees to be nice, play nice, be nice to each other. In adulthood, that can metastasize into, just keep your head down. Don't make any trouble. Don't attract unwanted attention to yourself. If it's not happening to you, just let them get on with it. But nice like that is a cope. It's this. It's reassuring yourself that your tolerance and turning a blind eye to what you know to be wrong is somehow justified. But I suppose 4 words, I suppose, revelation was, the system is rotten. And once you accept that, it's simultaneously disorientating and upsetting, but it's also completely freeing. When I say the system is rotten, I mean that everything about it is utterly and irredeemably wrong. You can't fix it. We're not going to vote our way or even peacefully protest our way out of this. To think that you'll vote your way out of this in the carefully by-election or whatever, or the next general election, I mean, that's for the birds. You have to. That's the first step out. Donald Trump used to talk about the swamp. Well, the first step out of the swamp is just to accept that you are in it up to your neck, and the solution is to get out of the swamp. I mean, people will people come at me all the time saying, "What are you talking about? Anarchy?" And I suppose I am. But if you bother for 5 minutes to look at anarchy, it's about just not needing to be governed. It's not about running through the streets dressed like a punk and smashing windows. That's not anarchy. Is just not needing to be governed, and it's a grown-up responsibility to not need governed. You have to be able to govern yourself, and so chaos, by definition, is there's no room for chaos if you're going to govern yourself. That's not how it works. But I'll illustrate this with my grandpa, my dad's dad, who died in a home for old soldiers, 1980 something, a long time ago now. But he survived the First World War. One of the few anecdotes that I knew about that whole He was conscripted in 1916 and he was in it till the end. And he was wounded multiple times but survived, obviously. But when he came home, I remember one of the anecdotes was that he came home with his uniform and a kit bag. He was in civvies, but he had his uniform. And his dad, my grandfather's father, took this out of the kit bag, and it was this fouled, filthy thing. And he took it straight out into the back court of the tenement flat and burnt it. He put it in a brazier and he burnt it. And the system, the things that we've been invited to put on, like voting and the judiciary and the rule of law, all of these things, are now, you might say, the stinking, rotten uniform of the conscript. You were made to put it on, and you were marched away to do something that was none of your affair. And you have to shrug it off, and we have to contemplate, and there's an optimism to be found in thinking there are all manner of better ways to be, and they have nothing to do with the way that things have been. And unless and until you do that, if you just continue to think that you can nice your way out of this, and that you can say that you can reform the system, you can't. To say you could reform this system, you might as well be saying that terminal disease has its good points.
Yeah, I agree.
You just have to get away. And when it comes to the likes of digital ID that you and I were specifically talking about the other day, I was walking my dog around a field somewhere, and one of us phoned the other one. I can't remember who did what, but obviously the topic of digital ID came up, and I was referencing to you that the very first film I remember seeing, I used to watch a lot of films, was one of the first films I remember about the threat of machines, AI, was War Games. Matthew Broderick, as a youngster, was in it as a computer geek. He had those big sort of 8-inch floppy disks that looked like floppy LPs. It was so primitive, the computing that he had. But it was all about how he accidentally triggered a sort of an AI bot to start World War III. Only it didn't really. It was just playing war games. It was just a modelling thing. NORAD and all the lights came on and they thought the Russians were attacking and whatever. And at the end of it, the machine learns itself by playing what they call in America tic-tac-toe, but we call it noughts and crosses. It learns the futility. Because as you know, if you know how to play noughts and crosses and you play it with someone else who knows how to play noughts and crosses, you can't win. And so Joshua, which is the kind of name of the computer intelligence, says sometimes the only winning move is not to play. And for me, one of the fundamentals of dealing with AI, digital ID, the various manifestations of the technocracy, is to think that's their game. They have come up with a rigged game, and you can't beat them at it. There's no point in engaging with them. But once you know that it's a no-win scenario to involve yourself with their nonsense, the only winning move is not to play. And then with that mindset, I think there's cause for optimism, because everything else is possible. We've been herded into this narrow spectrum view that this is all you can have, and this is all you can do, and this is the only way to think, and this is just the way it is. You know, less carbon, less food, less beef. You know, and 15-minute cities, that's enough for you, that's good enough for you. We've been herded into this. And you can shrug it all off and think, well, absolute nonsense. It doesn't have to be like that. And so, as I say, it's taken me years, and that's you know, a summary of where I've ended up. But I don't feel bleak.
Love it. So much there to unpack. So, do you know in Glasgow there's this armadillo, you know, the Armadillo Centre? So this is kind of being long-winded, but I went to the Armadillo Centre because there was a Liberal Democrat conference there, and I wanted to, you know, as a medical student, get involved in politics because I thought I could make a difference, make a change. And I walked around this convention, and I was so disillusioned with everybody. They're just talking garbage. I could just hear these empty words, people smiling, a lot of talk, but nothing of meaning. And I was like, well, not taking part in this. Then I went and looked at the Labour Party and got disillusioned with that. Then looked at the Conservative Party, got disillusioned with that. Then went back to the Labour Party, got disillusioned with that. Then joined the Brexit Party, got disillusioned with that. And then I became a libertarian, and I thought, do you know what? We just need a small government. We need, just libertarian. I love Ron Paul and all the stuff that he was coming up with. No wars, reclaim, your finances away from the central bank, privately held central banks, all that kind of stuff. But honestly, in the last year or two, I've become an anarchist. And, my heart sang when you talked about anarchy. An means without, Arcos means ruler. Anarchy does not mean, like you said, Molotov cocktails and chaos and people stabbing each other in the street like the movie Purge. It's simply without rulers, without authority. And people might be like, well, but we need people to make the roads. But roads were made before government came along. And well, we need, otherwise there'll be chaos. No, you just have to look around you. Like you interact with people all the time. Is one of you a ruler? Is one of you dictating to the other people? When you gather as friends, is there a ruler? No, there are rules, and some are written down, some are unsaid, some are said, some are verbal, some are non-verbal, and you just know how to conduct yourself. So I believe in rules, but no rulers, no authority. And I think clearly people have identified that, because guess what? This morning, I got an email from Jeff Berwick, Dollar Vigilante, and he's invited me to speak at Anarchapulco next year, which
Anarchapulco.
which is the annual anarchist convention. So clearly they have realized that I'm an anarchist as well. And I agree with you, mate. I think one of the biggest problems today is belief in the cult. And the problem is you can see all the other cults except the one you're in. And there are many cults: climate change, COVID, vaccine cults, NHS cult, religious cult, organized religious cults. And then there's government. Government's a cult. People believe in government, like it's going to protect them and save them. And I think you're right. We need to step away from them. But listen, I'm going to put my devil's advocate hat on, right? And say, look, very easy for you to say step away, Neil, but when you need a mortgage and you need a new passport, you want to get married, they're going to say you need this OneGov login. Like, how can you step away when your life, you're in the matrix and now they're dictating everything to you? Like, it sounds wonderful what you're saying, but when they say you can't buy anything, you can't access your bank account, you can't spend anything, all the shops are going to be closed, the Perplex glasses will shut, and you will be denied. Like, what do you do then? How do you step away from that?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you get it as well, because when you have this temerity to speak at all, it takes about a nanosecond for people to say, aye, that's all very good, but what am I supposed to do? And part of my anarchic philosophy, you shouldn't. It's not about waiting for somebody to tell you what to do. And you're right. I mean, about wanting, accepting rules, because we're playing a game. Life's a game. And it's like wee boys playing football. They don't need much. 4 jumpers for 2 sets of goalposts and a rudimentary understanding of the rules. And they can play football from dawn until dusk. But if somebody on the pitch insists on picking up the ball and running with it, that's it. Well, now we're playing some sort of football rugby hybrid. So it's very, people do understand, and the common law, so-called, is very basic. I mean, it boils down to my rights end where your rights begin. The common law is essentially don't hurt anyone and don't cause deliberate damage, and respect the boundaries around other people. And that's it really. And instead of which we've ended up with statutes that the height of the Empire State Building of laws, which these are. It is quite simple. But in answer to your question, it's sort of prevaricating. It's about if people just didn't play the game. When it came to all of this, started for me obviously with the pandemic that wasn't. My wife and I simply didn't take the jabs, and at that point, when we decided not to do that, and our kids didn't, we weren't really thinking about what anybody else was going to do, because at that point I hadn't realised that these products were lethal. That thought hadn't crossed my mind. We just looked at one another and thought, not do that. Let's see where we are this time next year when they come round again. But lo and behold, lots of people didn't either. For as many other reasons as there are other people, they just didn't do it. And then obviously all the truth has come out for all the difference it has made. All the malevolence around those products that were pushed into billions of people. The same thing applies with, say, digital ID and the rest of it. If enough people just don't take one, that's it. They would have had mandated jabs every Monday morning till the end of time, until everybody was dead, if everybody had just joined the queue and rolled up their sleeves. But enough people didn't that it became unworkable. And so that whole mandatory jabs thing went away until it hasn't gone away, but it's hiding in the long grass. It's gone quiet a bit until the situation reasserts itself on the part of the baddies. But if people just don't do it, and obviously you have to find your way. You can't insist to people that they lose their home in pursuit of a greater goal. And you can't insist that somebody loses their job. You can't be telling other people what to do, which is why I don't tell people to do it. But if enough people realised and accepted that if we all just don't do it, then it won't happen. And you already talked in the preamble before about your cooperative food association that you're a part of. There are multiple other ways for people to interact with one another, and there are many, many ways for us to get things done. But it starts with enough people in the same moment just not playing the game. That's really all it takes. But I'm not going to sit here and say to people, oh well, if your employer tells you that you're going to lose your job and you've just got. That's not my business. People with their own affairs have to navigate their own reality. But the fact remains that if many of us, and it doesn't even have to be most of us, but if many of us just didn't do it, all of this nonsense goes away. Central bank digital currencies, 24-hour surveillance, it just goes away. It just does. The part of the problem, part of this thing I was saying about being a naturally bleak and pessimistic person, but that having become actually part of my cure, is the acceptance that being free is actually onerous. It's oversold in a way. Everyone talks about, the truth will set you free, and the truth is like a lion, just let it loose and it'll fight for itself. But freedom means no safety net. Freedom means nobody telling you what's the best thing to do for you or for your family. You're picking up all of that weight by yourself as a mum or a dad or whatever, and trying to move it as far down the road as you can for as long as you can. And if you're confronted with actual freedom, it's a damn tough bullet to chew. Chris Christopherson said freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. Which is another way of looking at it. But once you accept the possibilities of just disbelieving the overarching massive lie that we're told, which is that we need them, we don't. We need each other in small groups, people who know each other and have reason to believe in each other, and over a period of time have assessed that person is trustworthy. You can't do that on a mass scale. You can't know if you can trust somebody that you connect with remotely 10,000 miles away. You've got no idea what you're dealing with. So it can only work. But people can be allied one to another, and can forge communities. And you say that, and people are like, oh God, we're going straight back to medieval period. We'll all be living in mud huts and so on and so on. But no, but there have always been. There are other ways of. You forget that there have always been other ways of doing things. And I am definitely not an advocate of some kind of golden age. I don't believe in that. I think life's always been hard in its own way at different times, and sometimes for most people, but certainly always hard for some people. But if you just go back to before the First World War, Britain had the densest rail network on the planet. right, which it had been building since the 19th century, way back in the 19th century. There's something like 25,000 miles of railway in what is a relatively small country.
Mm-hmm.
And there were trains to everywhere. Every village, pretty much. There was a branch line went off to it, and people could, didn't need cars, for example, because the trains went just about everywhere. And then all of that was undone for all sorts of, nefarious political reasons that we could get into, but and whatever. But there have always been other ways. I can remember, because I'm the age that I am, 58. I remember the world before any of the computers, really, realistically. Certainly not in the private homes. And the only phones were everything. We had a phone in our house, one phone with a cable, a twirly cable. But at that time, I was in that world. I made and enjoyed more phone calls than I have ever done since. I think there's a crushing irony in the fact that people still talk about their phones. Phone is phono, it's sound. It's the last thing that people use their mobile phones for. Certainly my kids, they never talked to each other on the phone. But you talked. When I lived away from home as a student and stuff, I was on the phone to my mum. I'd go to a call box with a pile of 10 pence pieces and I would phone and we'd talk for ages. And people phoned and people wrote letters. Again, I'm not harking back to a goal. I'm not saying, it was better in the past. But it's important in this world of being told, there's only one option. One gov login or you can't do anything. Absolute nonsense. This is absolute nonsense. You mentioned, what was the context in which you mentioned roads? We couldn't build roads. You said, we couldn't come together and build roads. Well, everyone thinks the Romans built all the roads. Well, no, because the Romans came out of Italy on chariots. Before they had the chance to build any roads, they were coming out into a paved world, right? However, people already all over Europe had built roads. There was a road network. And the Romans hijacked it and took it over and did what they did with it and maybe extended it. But there were roads. Otherwise, they couldn't come out. How the hell did they get out of Italy if there was nothing but, heathland? Not like that. There's always there's nothing new under the sun, and people have always found ways to do things. Sometimes really, really good ways, and ways that pleased people and satisfied people and gave them good lives. And I'm not harking back to a golden age, but you adopt this mindset where they tell you, you won't be able to pay your mortgage, and you won't be able to go to the supermarket, and you won't be able to put fuel in your car, and somebody will be telling you if you can buy a steak or a bottle of wine or put gas in your car. Really? It doesn't have to be like that. It's not. It's nonsense. People are accepting a psyop, a massive psyop that you just need to shrug off like worn out clothes.
Bingo. Quick little interruption, folks. Let me remind you, if you visit my website, docmalik.com, look at the top tab, you'll see I've got a shop. You can buy some merch there, but also under affiliates, you can see some of the products that I'm using at home. And there's Hunter and Gather. And there's a 10% code you can use there. They've got fantastic products. There's a spa and wellness company. Again, you can get 3% discount using Doc Malik. And then there's Sea Greens, seaweed nutrition, rich in biocompatible iodine and micronutrients. Again, use Doc Malik, all capitals, for 10% discount. All the details are on docmalik.com/affiliates. Check them out. I don't get any money until you spend and buy something, but every purchase will help support the show. And these are things that we use in the family. There's, they're good stuff, and check it out. And then the next thing I would say is remember my consultation service, folks. If you've got a pesky condition, you're frustrated with your doctor, you want a second opinion, you feel like you're at a dead end, you got too many questions and too many unanswered, questions, and you don't know how to move forward, pick my brains. That's why I'm here. And so far, I seem to be making a difference. I've got 55-star reviews now, which I'm absolutely delighted about. And the feedback has been amazing. I mean, just the latest one by Gillian. I very much appreciated my consultation with Dr. Malik to discuss my 91-year-old mother's health crisis. He talked us through her diagnosis and proposed treatment plan in a way I could understand and answered the many questions we had. It was exactly what I needed to try and get my head around why she's suffering so much and best path forward. Wonderful man, and so pleased to be able to tap into his knowledge and support. Thank you, Gillian, and thank you everyone else who left a review. So folks, yeah, if you want to tap into my knowledge, unfiltered, uncaptured, someone who respects bodily autonomy, understands the sick care system, and also how to be truly healthy, I'm here to help you. Lastly, folks, please don't subscribe to my Substack through the Apple Store, the Apple app. I get literally 50% of whatever you give to me. The rest is all taken by the App Store and Substack. All right, folks, listen, without further ado, back to the show. Thank you so much. And, you talked about the rail network. The fascinating thing about that rail network is it wasn't the government that built it. And this is what people need to understand. Even all the Victorian engineering, all the sewage, all the irrigation, the water, all that was made, under private hands, and people just need to get rid of this notion that government provides, government cares. But the problem now, Neil,
Can I just jump in again there?
Yeah, fire away.
You made me do this today, Ahmed, and I'm going to hijack all the time, right?
Go. Do it.
No, I'm joking. But I brought it up, the war, for various reasons. The First World War. We don't need to get into either, but the First World War was caused to get the bankers out of the financial hole they were in. 40, 50 years of fraudulent behaviour by the banks, fractional reserve banking, writing cheques that their vaults couldn't cash, and all the rest of it. They were teetering on the brink. From one end of Europe across to America, chaos was about to unfold that would have seen the bankers hanging by their ankles or their necks from lampposts with piano wire, right, because of the devastation that was about to be wrought. But it caused a war. And by the end of that war, for the first time and forever, banks told governments what to do. Where previously there had been some element of governments telling banks what to do. But they didn't just survive the war on account of what they did, but they took control at that point, right? The First World War was absolutely a banker's war. Wars are all bankers' wars, but the First World War really is a letters 50 feet high, throbbing red as a message to the world. Bankers cause wars. That's what they're for. It's a war economy that we live in. But there's something incredibly poignant about the fact that everyone takes they probably walk past them now, largely overlooking them, but the war memorials that are everywhere. Soldiers in granite, heads bowed, hands on rifle, looking down, plaques on walls, bronze. Every railway station, every village green, every town square has a war memorial, right? Every single one of them was commissioned by the people that had lost sons and brothers and husbands. The government didn't have anything to do with it. It's the largest public art project ever, anywhere. There are 40-odd thousand war memorials across Britain, and every single one of them was commissioned by artists, interviewed, artists commissioned, money raised. It's all done by local communities, from villages to towns to all of the rest of it. Because while the war had been caused, while the war was a deliberate scam that harvested millions of innocent people, all of that was the work of government and their associated little wizards. But in people in wanting to remember, and their emotional response to it, to needing somewhere to go to take their grief, because their sons and whatever were all pink mist that had blown away, in France or Gallipoli or whatever else. And there was nowhere to go with a wreath. So they built their own war memorials. And it was the people, it was communities that did that. So the war was a banker's war, but it happened to the people, and the people responded to it in the only way that they could, which was in coming together to deal with it. And that's what people do. They come together to deal with stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Neil, I love you.
I love you too.
You articulate everything so well. I love your flowery language. I love the way you depict things. I love the way you cut through all the noise. You've got a really sharp mind. Absolutely. And what I hope is that by doing these podcasts and by doing what you're doing, we're just giving people the mental vocabulary and concepts and ideas to be able to imagine a different world and to be able to imagine the ability to say no and not go along. Because societies, regimes have done things in the past like restrict food so that the people aren't strong and can't revolt, or restrict language so people are dumbed down. And if you don't know the language and you don't have the vocabulary, you can't conceptualize freedom and liberty or whatever that is. And I think right now a lot of humanity doesn't actually understand what freedom actually means. They're so under the yoke of authority. They give up their taxis to the man in the suit and they think it's all right. And it's funny, if a man with a hoodie with a knife in the street said, give me 50% of what's in your wallet, you'd be like, that guy's a criminal. But when the government does it, it's like, yeah, okay, here you go. You just moan about it. Like, we as a society, as a people, have forgotten what it means to be truly sovereign and free. And I think that's what we need to do, is remind people the power that's within us all.
And it is a generational thing. I mean, this is no quick fix. It's taken hundreds of years of psyop, one after the other, to get people into the mess that they're in. And it's not unreasonable to say that, much of the population is functioning essentially like battery hens. They're caged, they're limited, their wings are clipped, they're pumped full of antibiotics, and they get fed from a tray that they can stick their beaks through. And you can't just let battery hens out. They'll just die.
Exactly. Such a good analogy, and I'm going to interject now, because the problem is now so many people are dependent on the government for their jobs as well. All the battery hens getting their food from the government. They don't know how to go out and survive on their own. That's a big element to it.
Yeah, and it's not their fault, but it's like I say, that's why that if you think anything you think that's out there, that's visible, that's readily accessible to you, is going to help, then by definition it isn't. So like voting, right? We're not going to be allowed to vote our way out of this. If whatever it is held up as something you can vote for, it's part of the problem. It's been preordained that we'll get rid of them and we'll bring that in and we'll call that the solution. By definition, and it extends to, you and I are increasingly, people like us are kind of, are pushed to the fringes. It's harder and harder to get your word out because it's all being tamped down. And so really what you want to do in many ways is, if someone, broadly speaking, out there in the public eye is being, ridiculed, shut down and described as a crank, they're the very people you ought to be at least paying attention to for 10 minutes to see what you think yourself. And by contrast, if somebody's being given more and more airtime to say that they're the solution, well, maybe they are, but personally I doubt it. But all of the mechanisms of the system are there it's a psyop to make you think you're free. It's the worst kind of captivity, is thinking you're free when you're actually caged. That's the cruelest trick of all. And people mobilise about, we're going to start a new political party and whatever. Oh, are you? And are you allowed to have that? That's okay, you can have your wee rosettes. What colour have you chosen? Pale blue. Oh, bright pink, lovely, smashing. And you're going to stand and you're going to put out your leaflets and you have your website and all of the rest of it. If the system's letting you do it, it's because the system knows that it's impotent, that you are impotent. They've made you impotent. You talked about, in the morning, if a man's waking up and he doesn't have, an erection first thing in the morning, that, there's something wrong. That we've been made impotent. Not physically. Well, yeah, we have actually, but all that stuff's in the water supply to make men, that's the intention. But if you're allowed to do it, it's part of the kind of metaphorical impotency that has been put out there. It's not going to cut it. So don't think like that. If you're allowed to do it, it's probably not good for you.
Absolutely. Shannon Joy said the same thing. She said the biggest lie they don't want to reveal is the fact that democracy and voting actually doesn't do anything. It's part of the rigged game. But that's the thing they will fight to defend. And
different things, voting and democracy. I mean, people don't know what democracy is. Getting a majority in a general election has got nothing to do with democracy. That's set those two. You talk about democracy and talk about voting, but they are not husband and wife. They've never met.
But my friend Andrew Treglia did a documentary called Barnum's World. I really recommend it if you haven't watched it. And it's free. It's on YouTube, and it's hilarious. And it talks about how they want you to vote. And that, for example, if you look at the Americans, every election they say, this is the most important election of our time. Make sure you vote. And he has little clips of Republicans and Democrats saying the exact same word and going back, boom, boom, every 4 years to the 1970s, 1960s. And it's like, this election is the most important election of our time. You make sure you vote, because they want you at that casino table gambling away. But the problem is the house always wins. Like you said right at the beginning about war games, the best thing is just don't walk into the casino room, don't a casino hall. Just stay away. Don't gamble, because they've got you. The moment you walk in and step in, they've got you. And
I talked to a fantastic guy all the time. I keep in regular contact with the guy, Will Keat, and he's got a website. It's about the Constitution, constitution.org or something. You find him, Will Keat, and he's an expert, a self-taught expert. And him and his partner, they've taught themselves really and come to terms with the reality of matters constitutional. When you get away from the sort of paperwork element of it, when you get down deep, he talks about shadow work, which is for each of us to do. And it's shadow work because, apart from anything, you've got to confront yourself. You've got to confront the enemy or the weakness within. And you've got people are, especially in the West, people that, like I mentioned before, this thing about being nice and just going along with it won't cause trouble. Just keep your head, just be nice. That's anathema to what it means to be human and alive. It's uncomfortable to do what you did. You were a upcoming, doing well surgeon. You were on the way. You were a successful guy.
Dude, I was there. I wasn't on the way. I was there.
And you stood up. You stood up and said what you said, and they took all that away from you. Right? I need to tell you this, but you could have kept your head down, like all these, like anybody that's still got their job now, celebs especially, musicians, so-called people that advertise themselves as some kind of mavericks and anti-establishment. If they've still got their job and they've got another television series or another record contract or another movie deal, forget it. That person's a cutout. Ignore that. But you stood up and you did what you did, and it cost you what it cost you. It continues to cost you. And I'm the same. Not the same things, but other things analogous happened to me. Because it's uncomfortable to say no. It's uncomfortable and dangerous to your general well-being, physical and economic, to say, I don't think that's right. I'm no expert, but I've been on the planet long enough to think that smells like shit. I know the smell of shit. And I don't be putting it under my nose because I know that much. And so the shadow work that Will Keat talks about, it's about realising that the path to being a true human being is to not be nice when it's required. It's nice to be nice. Be nice with your kids and all, nice with your partner and all the rest. Nice, that's all right. But it's much more. It's utterly critical to be ready to say no. To say, I'm not doing that. I don't agree with that. I think you're wrong. Don't be nice. The herd don't like people that aren't nice. The herd itself is self-governing in that way. When somebody turns and moves in the opposite direction from where the herd is going, it's like, oh, what's wrong with you? And, my friend, I'm sure you've spoken to him as well by now, Jimmy Dore, the American comedian and fantastic podcaster. He talks so effectively about how, he has forgiven his friends for being wrong, but they will never forgive him for being right. What makes it uncomfortable to say no and not be nice is not just authority. to some extent, it's because you're going to get up in the faces of your loved ones, if necessary, your family, your workmates, your community, the common herd. That's where your real problem's going to come from. If you're going to have the temerity to say, hang on, I can smell shit somewhere. What? Hang on. Ignore it. Just keep going. Just don't talk about it. Don't be nice. That's foundational to how we get out of here. There's too many nice people. You need pain in the arse, hand up. Oh, what? Him again? Jesus. Will he never shut up? No, don't. Don't ever shut up.
Absolutely. Mate. Yeah, put me in touch with William.
Keats. Yeah, he's fantastic. All the stuff about common law, but you very quickly end up, down where the buses don't go, and you're in there with the nature of what it is to be a thinking, responsible grown up.
Yeah, I'd like to have that chat with him. I had Graham Moore on from the English Constitutional Party or whatever, and he was great. And he's of the opinion that everything we need is in the English Constitution and the Scottish Constitution. I disagree. I've done some reading of the Bill of Rights, and what it really does...
The Bill of Rights is poison, man. Don't go
poison.
there.
I know. It transfers, basically, authority from the king to a bunch of people in Parliament. I mean, it's just like...
Well, the people that say, if people say the Glorious Revolution, 1688, Bill of Rights, William and Mary and all that, that's the beginning of the end.
Yes.
From that, we got that Parliament is sovereign. Is it bollocks?
Absolutely.
People are sovereign. Parliament's Parliament. That's an administration. That's supposed to do what the people tell it to do. End of.
Yep.
Out of the Bill of Rights and all the rest of it, that led inevitably to the political party system and the Cabinet Office, which means that from the advent of the political parties, whether Benjamin Disraeli in the early 1800s and all of the rest of it, that was the death of Parliament. I mean, Parliament, bad enough. Parliament's a threat if you make it sovereign. But once it was hijacked and taken over by the parasitic zombies of the political parties, that's the end. And that was deliberate. I mean, that didn't happen by accident. That, King James the second had his detractors, but really looked at in the round, he was a good king, and he was a damn sight more progressive than the people that ousted him. That was a takeover. That was a Dutch invasion of Britain in 1688, and everything that's gone wrong since
absolutely
has the genetic inheritance of the Bill of Rights. The Constitution as it was, and Magna Carta 1215, right? That was only a restating. That wasn't new. There's nothing new in the Magna Carta 1215. Not really. It was just a restatement. Has everyone forgotten? Right, I'll write it down again. Here's everything you need to know, 1215. You, King, you're illiterate. Put your seal on that, you muppet, and we can get on with things, right? But it was restated. Emperor Conrad in Germany, 200 years before, had stated the same thing broadly that's in Magna Carta about things like the right to trial by jury. That's democracy in action, right? If you enable a parliament if you enable a government to write legislation, pass it, and then impose the penalties for breaching it, that's textbook tyranny, right? The protection that is inbuilt in the system before we get to things like 1688 and the Bill of Rights, which is poison, was that you could not take from a person his property, his good name. You couldn't take anything from him unless you had brought him before a jury of his peers or her peers. And peers are people that live a life like you, people that can identify with you and empathise with you. That's what peers are supposed to be. And it's in that way, because of the independence of the jury, which has been completely compromised, that someone gets brought into court accused of something, and 12 people in England or 15 in Scotland listen to the evidence. But most important of all, they judge with their own human conscience. Precedent bollocks, forget it. Who is this person? What have they been accused of? What is the legislation that's been used to bring this person in here? And what do we think? Do we think they're guilty or innocent? right? And in a true jury trial, if one person says innocent and 11 people say guilty, the verdict of the jury is innocent, because enshrined within the proper functioning of trial by jury is the sovereignty of the individual. Therein lies a summary of why majorities are not right, just because they're the majority. Majorities get things wrong all the time. If we'd had referenda about mandated jabs and lockdowns, would all look like porcupines and would be locked down yet, because that's the way the majority would have gone at that time. On the contrary, they don't just judge the guilt or innocence of the accused, they also look at the legislation that, let's remember, them over there with the long noses for looking down at you and the suits and the wee monocles and everything, they have written that for a reason. And you get to judge the justice of the law itself. And if the jury decides that that legislation is faulty, they throw it out. They can knock it back. That's democracy in action. Right? So, we mentioned the fact that we don't have democracy, and it's got nothing to do with voting. This is critically important, and all of this stuff is out there, and it's available in the sort of content that Will Keat puts out on his website. But these are the things that are so important for people to grasp.
What's his website? Is it the New Chartist Movement?
No, it's constitution.org. Put in constitution.org or learn constitution.
Okay.
We'll make sure that it's in the notes for this. I'll get it to you, and if people, we can put the link in the in the notes.
Yeah,
in the notes
please.
under it. But yes, the point being that the Constitution is what's in the Constitution, which people are in. Magna Carta 1215 matters hugely because it was an accurate restatement, but it was nothing new, and because it was established before there was Parliament, government. It is and should remain untouchable by government. It's not created by them. They can't touch it. By definition, they exist within the framework that the Constitution frames. So they have to abide by the Constitution. They don't get to otherwise, to go back to that football analogy, that would be like if some of the guys on the football pitch during the run of play said, let's just change the rules. Let's pick up the ball. You can't have that. You're either playing football or you're not. And the government cannot change the Constitution, not at that level. And it's interesting to note, when I mentioned King James, who was the one that was ousted to make way for William and Mary and the Bill of Rights and all of that sham, James had a confidant in the form of a guy called, I think it's William Penn, Penn, guy actually who subsequently went on to found Pennsylvania, right? But he was quite oppositional to James in a way. He didn't agree with him about everything, but he was in his milieu, and he offered advice, and interestingly, if you were to go to the Old Bailey, there's a plaque on the wall. And it details what's called the Bushels case. William Penn was a Quaker, and he and another guy who's, I think it's Meade, Meade, Penn and Meade case. They were accused of unlawful assembly, right? They were preaching somewhere in London, Quaker things, anti-establishment stuff, I presume. And they got arrested and charged, and they were brought before a court and a jury, charged with unlawful assembly, and the jury returned a verdict of not guilty. No, that's not. There's nothing. No, sorry. And the foreman of the jury was a guy called Bushell, and the judge was so incensed that he threw the jury in jail and said, "You're staying in jail, and I'm putting you on no bread, no water, or whatever, until you come back and you give the verdict that you were instructed to give." Right? It's the 17th century. And they went to jail, and then they were brought back, and they were told, right, have you thought about it? Are you going to do what you're told now? And they said, no, still not doing it. Back to jail. Anyway, the whole thing ran its course, and the Bushels case, the jury was acquitted, as was Penn and Meade, and the whole thing, So despite what the judge had tried to force, it didn't happen. And the Bushell's case established for all time the independence of the jury. The jury is not to be tampered with. The jury is not to be bossed around by the judge or anybody else. And you can't be bullying them with precedent or statute or anything else. The jury is an independent entity. It's a little parliament. It's a little standalone moment in time. 12 good men and women, whatever. And they make the judgment. And that's a plaque on the wall in the Old Bailey to this day, the Bushell's case. It underlines the independence of the jury. And the independence of the jury in that context, when you think about it, is the underpinning of democracy itself. And all of this stuff is out there, Ahmed. There's plaques on walls that declare this stuff. And it's immovable. And the establishment, this corrupt system that I'm talking about and bemoaning, would rather all this stuff went away. They would do away with the Constitution. They would rub it out. They would take plaques like 90-odd% of trials now of court proceedings see no jury, because the establishment hates the jury system because of everything that's inherent in the independence of the jury. They would do away with all of that. But in that kind of, those immovable objects, they can't get rid of it. And it keeps them awake at night because the truth is out there, literally. And we don't have to be bullied by and beholden to the state and the system, because the system's corrupt.
The system is corrupt. And you know how you started by saying we just don't comply, we just say no. I mean, those jurors, they were denied food and water, and they were locked up, they didn't have any heat, and they were being told you need to vote guilty. They all just said no. And they were literally locked up. And they just said no.
At one point, the jury's brought back in, and Penn and Mead are still in the dock, or they're brought back into the dock to see the next bit. And Penn shouts something, I can't remember the words of it, but it's something like, do not give up your humanity. Do not give up your right to be a free person. And Bushell shouts, we will not. We won't. As they're getting dragged by their forelocks back into the cells. But they stood up to it and said, no, on your way, judge. Who are you anyway, except paid by the state? You're an employee of the very system that's trying to impose this iniquity on these men. We'll be the judge of you as well as everything else, thanks very much. And so right were they that it's enshrined in stone on the wall of the Old Bailey.
Wow. And this is the thing, so much history, true history, is hidden, deliberately forgotten.
Culted.
Yeah, and humanity's suffering amnesia. Anna Dubussert used to tell me this. People just don't know their rights. They don't know their freedoms. And the thing is, this country is so rich in freedom and our fight against tyranny, and how we've defeated it so many times, and how it rears its ugly head again and tries to come back. I mean, like you said, the parliamentarians, they were meant to represent the constituency. They weren't members of parties. They would be sent up maybe 4 or 5 times a year to London to talk about what the local issues were, and address them, and that was it. They didn't live in Westminster. They represented their people, and if the people felt that this person wasn't doing their job, they would get rid of them. Something not nice would happen. But now suddenly then you got this parliament which is sovereign. You got political parties. You've got whips. You got manifestos that aren't worth a toilet paper. You got politicians who serve globalists and corporations. And then we talk about imposing democracy in other parts of the world when we don't have any democracy at home. We've got nothing but tyranny. It's just a sham. But listen, GB News, where you work at, is pushing reform big time. I think the whole of social media and mainstream media is pushing reform to be the next political party in power. Nigel Farage, the Prime Minister. Don't you think reform is the answer? I know you're an anarchist, but they say a lot of good things, don't they?
I won't vote in the next election. I won't vote again. I mean, I can't imagine voting again. I'll never say never, because, maybe the whole thing will get sanitised and cleaned up, but I won't vote. So it's irrelevant to me who's being held up as the next in the Punch and Judy show of politics. Whoever it is that's being held up as the Great White Hope isn't. Not in that. They can't be. And it's not because of the people. That's not the issue. It's the system. You could be the most well-intentioned person. I'm not saying that everyone's, that because it is a psyop and people have been brainwashed. Understandably. I was never an enthusiastic voter. I have voted, but a lot of the time I just didn't bother. If it was raining, I just wouldn't go. I just wasn't, whatever. I'd forget. I'd forget that there'd been a general election until I heard the result on the news the next day or something. But I just won't vote. So whatever, whether it be Labour, Conservative, Liberal, Reform, Advance UK, whatever the thing is that Jeremy Corbyn, has that got a name, that thing?
Oh, God knows.
Whatever. I just carry on. If you want to, if people want to do that, if they want to do that, but I look on at it in this, those magazines that you see at the checkout in supermarkets, and there's various of them, and they have the characters from soap operas on the front page.
Yeah.
They're magazines about the soap operas. And they invite people to think that what's happening on Coronation Street or in EastEnders or Emmerdale or whatever is actually real. Because they look the same as other magazines. And a lot of people are taken in. I mean, people send presents when there's a baby born in EastEnders. They send in christening gifts and stuff. I mean, there are people out there who are completely... The separation between fact and fiction doesn't exist for them. Politics is that for me. I would no more be bothered about what was happening in Parliament, really, in that I thought it mattered, as I would what's happening behind the bar of the Old Vic, or whatever. It's all just panto. I kind of refuse to get... like we all do. I mean, I get furious about Keir Starmer and stuff, and whatever. And that's despite the fact that I know he's a husk. Whether he's sold his soul to the devil or not, he's just an empty void. He's just a sock puppet.
Yeah.
Ready to receive whatever hand and forearm up him to move him about, and another voice will come out of his lips. That, even though I know that, I get enraged by him. So I'm still vulnerable to it. I mean, I might as well be getting angry about, the villain in a panto or Darth Vader in Star Wars. Although I know that the figure was actually David Prowse, the Green Cross Code Man, and it's the voice of James Earl Jones. It's complete. But I can remember hating Darth Vader. I'm still susceptible to it because the psyop is so powerful. I get angry about Donald Trump, or I get angry about whoever, and then I check myself and I think, you're getting angry about a panto, Neil. That, whatever they decide doesn't matter. That's been decided elsewhere, and it'll be imposed on us by other people whose names we don't know and whose faces we're not invited to consider.
Amen. Amen. I'm with you 100%. Along with the whole, could be arse with voting half the time, to it is all pantomime, and I'm just not interested. And also, I
think a lot of people are, Ahmed. I talk to people all the time. I live in Stirling, which is quite a small place, really. And I mean, like you would, I've lived here for 18 years or something, and I'd be a known face anyway, but I'm an especially known face because I've been on telly and whatever for years. But people come up to me all the time to talk to me about how much nonsense they know is going on.
Yeah.
The world's gone mad, Neil. What were they going to do, Neil? It's all crazy. I didn't take the jab either. Thanks for... the world is full of... And I understand, they don't have platforms from which to shout and all of the rest of it, but I'm reassured all the time by the fact that there's millions of people out there that think exactly what we're saying.
100%. But I want to talk to you about something I had a conversation. I have to keep the person anonymous. They're actually bound up in a non-disclosure agreement for at least 3 years, and he'll get into trouble if I expose who he is. But he was in, and it's about the systems and how there's good people, and even if you get good people in, nothing can change. So this guy was invited to Washington to take part in Maha, and met people like Jay Bhattacharya and was involved with the people in the machinery and Bobby Kennedy's team and everything. And after a year, he was like, I've had enough, I'm out. And I remember having a conversation with him over a year ago saying, it's not going to make any difference. they're not going to do anything. And he was like, no, we need to take part in the system, and you're so like pessimistic and black-pilled, and no, we need to fix it from within. Well, last night he told me, you were right, Ahmed. You can't fix it. He goes, even the people, you might get some good people at the top who might believe in what they're doing, but there are so many people like below the management class. And he talks about how in the States, for example, you can't just get rid of these civil servants. You can't just sack them. They have rights and protections. And he goes, all of them are so brainwashed and ideologically dead that even if you get a wonderful leader at the top saying, look, this is a new, they will do everything possible to sabotage any effort, and they will drag you through the mud, slow you down, sap your energy, tie you up in meetings galore, you know, and so nothing gets done. And he goes, Ahmed, I was just tearing my hair out. After a year, I just realized it doesn't matter how much energy I bring to this, no matter how hard I try and fix this, it isn't going to work. And being inside the system, I can't do jack shit. Neither can anybody else. And it reminded me of my time in the NHS. I thought, if I become a consultant, I'll make things better. If I become head of the department, I'll make things better. But the machinery, the system is so big. It's such a juggernaut. I'm just a tiny little cog in the wheel, and it doesn't matter how hard I try. It's like a bug being squashed by a steamroller coming across a road. And I don't think these systems can be fixed from within. I think, like you said, you need to step away. You need to start making your own system, your own parallel system outside. So that's why I don't engage with politics. And
I think you have people have to, you have to allow yourself. Well, I realised, it'll just be, it's personal, isn't it? That you can't just reform a system. If a system's a machine, if you've got a meat grinder, that's what it does. You put chunks of flesh in at the top, and mince comes squirting out at the bottom. That's what it does. Now, with the best will in the world, you're not going to turn that into a typewriter. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to write Shakespeare on your reformed meat grinder. You're going to have to go and design a typewriter. Build one if you have to. Whatever. So you're getting involved in politics thinking you're going to fix politics. You can't, because it's not what it's for. It does what it does. And it does it really, really well.
Bingo. That's another thing people need to understand. Systems that appear broken are in fact working perfectly well. They are working inefficiently in a harmful way because that's the design. The system is working exactly as its output is presenting itself. It's not that it's broken and needs fixing. It is that. It's working perfectly well.
There was a tweet the other day. Someone put a thing. It was one of the myriad, squanderings of money. Right, it was something about X million was being sent to some rather benighted place in Africa.
Yeah,
God bless Africa. For everything that's been done to it. But some tens of millions were being sent out to. I think it was for tractors.
Right.
On the face of it, get a bit of agriculture going. But it turned out the money was being repurposed to fix the dictator's fleet of cars. You're right. Surprise, surprise. And I mean, I kind of responded to it and said, well, that's not like incompetence or anything like. That's how that's supposed to work. It's part of enraging people. For a start, money, like you say, is being mugged from people in Britain under the guise of tax, and then they go, right, where can we spray this? Where can we dump this? Do you want it? Oh no, there's no, I can't. I'll have to spend some money before I can make any room for any more. I'll give it to Africa, and we'll burn it over there. And you know what? After 6 months, we'll let the people know that this is what happened, and that'll upset them. Now, that's not incidental or accidental. That's how it works, because it keeps the people angry, it keeps the people on edge, it wastes the money, and on and on and on it goes. And people talk about reforming that system.
Yeah,
forget it.
Exactly. Right, listen, last question of the day. I know you've answered this lots of times, but maybe you've changed your mind. People sometimes ask me this question back to me, and it does change depending on the day. But listen, you're on your deathbed before you pass on and meet your maker. What words of wisdom and advice would you give to your loved ones?
There's I'm sure you've probably heard this. I'm going to. It's because I'm a pessimistic person by nature, and I'm blessed with the fact that I'm married to somebody who's much more optimistic than I am. So in that yin and yang, light and dark, sweet and sour thing, we work. Part of why we work. And so, and I have, I'm a kind of a, I eat optimism in the same way that, you kids were persuaded to eat spinach. You might not come naturally to you, but it is good for you. And I look all the time I remind myself that because I'm naturally dark, that's not bad. Darkness gets a bad rap. Feeling sad. If you start talking about medical diagnoses of depression or something, being sad's all right. It's reflective and it brings thoughts. Don't worry about it. If you're overwhelmed by the enormity of the situation in which you find yourself, that's okay. That's not any kind of character flaw, and you don't need Prozac to get out of that. Go with that. And I think there's something very, very perfect. It's largely mythological, I think, really. But as with all myth is the perception of metaphysical reality. There's something real there somewhere, even if it's a myth. And there's a legend about a bit of graffiti being found on a wall of a basement or a cellar somewhere, where people, who knows who, were briefly taking shelter during the Second World War. Now, whoever they were, and however long they were down there, and whether it was a group or an individual, and etched into the wall was, I believe in the sun even when I cannot see it. I believe in love even when I do not feel it. I believe in God even when he is silent. Just because you can't see the sun, somewhere beyond the clouds, the sun is there. And just because you feel as if your life is bereft of love, love is all around you. And just because you think, God hates me because he's not talking to me or getting me out of this cellar, it's just you're not hearing him.
Beautiful. Neil, thank you so much. Lovely chatting to you, as always.
I love talking to you, Ahmed. I mean that. I say that with my hand on my heart. I met you a few years ago, as we said, and you're one of a handful of people that I met, a relative handful of people that I met in recent years that I just feel a sense of empathy with, connection to. And I positively enjoy your company.
Feeling is very mutual. I mean that. You're like a big brother. I, Ahmed Malik, am a private civilian protected by the Geneva Convention. My Substack, social media posts, and podcasts are my personal experiences, observations, and opinions. This information is for educational purposes only. Although I am a doctor, I am not your doctor, and I am not providing medical or legal advice to you or to the wider public. I am not licensed or registered with the GMC or any other licensing board. The responsibility for the interpretation, due diligence, and use of the information from my Substack and my podcast lies with you, the viewer and/or listener. Please do your research and use your discernment. It is not my intention to harass, intimidate, offend, defame, conspire, blackmail, coerce, or cause anxiety, alarm, or distress to any man or woman, and the information presented here is done so with peaceful and honourable intentions. Enjoy, folks.